Princess Velsera hit the frozen ground hard. The ice cracked beneath her weight as her body sank into the mud. Her silver blood seeped out slowly, turning to crystal the moment it touched the toxic air of Station Krell 9. Every breath felt like fire in her lungs. The atmosphere here wasn't meant for anyone without bioenhancements, and the royal court had stripped all of hers away before throwing her out of the ship. She tried to move, but couldn't. Her limbs refused to respond. The cold was spreading through her body like poison, shutting down her systems one by one. Above her, the sky churned with violent purple clouds, and freezing rain mixed with something that burned on contact. This miserable rock at the edge of the galaxy would be her grave. It wasn't supposed to end like this. She was royalty, princess of the Arconian Empire, seventh in line to the throne. She'd grown up in crystal palaces that floated above gas giants. She commanded fleets. She'd walked among the stars as if they belonged to her. But she'd made one mistake. She'd spoken the truth. 3 weeks ago, she'd stood before the Emperor and the entire royal court. They'd been planning something called a cleansing, a systematic elimination of what they called the inferior species. Billions would die, entire civilizations wiped out because the Arconians deemed them unworthy of existence. And when the Emperor asked if anyone objected, everyone stayed silent. Everyone except her. She'd said it was wrong. She called it murder. She demanded they reconsider. The court had gone silent. Her own mother wouldn't meet her eyes. The Emperor had smiled that cold smile of his and pronounced her sentence right there. Exile. Stripped of rank. Stripped of enhancements. Thrown onto the first garbage world they could find. No trial. No mercy. Just gone. Now here she was, dying in the mud like some common animal. Her telepathic abilities were fading. She could barely sense anything beyond her own pain. The irony wasn't lost on her. The Arconians prided themselves on being the superior race in the galaxy. Stronger, faster, smarter than everyone else. And yet here she was, brought down by simple cold and poison air. She'd always wondered what it felt like to be weak. Now she knew. It felt like drowning. Her vision was going dark when she heard something. Footsteps. Heavy boots crunching through the ice and frozen dirt. Someone was coming. For a brief moment, hope flickered in her chest. Maybe they'd changed their minds. Maybe someone from the court had come to bring her back. But no, the royal court didn't change their minds. Ever. A figure emerged from the blizzard. Not Arconian. Too short, too bulky in that thick environmental suit. Human, just a human miner, probably working one of the extraction sites that dotted this worthless planet. She tried to speak, to tell him to leave her alone, but her voice wouldn't work. The human knelt beside her. Through her fading vision, she could see his face through the helmet's visor. Rough features, scarred from years of hard work. Dark eyes that widened when he saw her condition. "Holy hell," the human said. His voice crackled through his suit speaker. "What happened to you?" She couldn't answer. The cold had taken her voice. The human didn't wait for an explanation. He scooped her up in his arms like she weighed nothing, even though Arconians were typically twice the size of humans. The movement sent fresh waves of agony through her body, but she was too weak to even cry out. "Come on, don't quit on me," he muttered, trudging through the storm toward a cluster of prefab buildings in the distance. Velsera's mind screamed at the situation. A human was carrying her. A human. Her people had conquered their world 2 generations ago. Humans were laborers, miners, servants. They existed to serve the Arconian Empire. They weren't supposed to help royalty. They weren't even supposed to touch royalty without permission. But this human wasn't asking permission. He was moving fast, his boots pounding against the frozen ground as the storm intensified around them. Ice pelted his suit, and the wind howled like something alive and angry. They reached a small shelter, barely more than a metal box with an airlock. The human kicked the door control, and it hissed open. He carried her inside and laid her on the floor as gently as he could. The airlock sealed behind them with a heavy clunk, and suddenly the howling wind was gone. The human pulled off his helmet. He was older than she'd thought, maybe 40 or 50 by human standards. Sweat dripped down his face despite the cold. He grabbed a thermal blanket from a wall locker and wrapped it around her shivering body. Okay. he said more to himself than to her. "You're Arconian. I've seen your kind before. Silver blood, dual respiratory system, right? The air out there's toxic to you, without enhancements." He knew about Arconian biology. Surprising for a human. He moved quickly, pulling out a basic med kit. His hands worked with practiced efficiency, checking her vitals with a handheld scanner that looked ancient by Arconian standards. His face grew more concerned with each reading. "This is bad," he whispered. "Real bad. You're shutting down." Velsera managed to focus on him. Their eyes met, and for just a moment, she tried to reach out with her telepathy to read his intentions. But her mental abilities were almost gone. She caught only fragments. Concern, determination, and something else. Kindness. Why would a human show her kindness? "Listen," the human said, leaning close. "I don't know who you are or what you did to end up out here. And right now, I don't care. I'm going to help you, but you got to fight. You understand? Don't give up." She wanted to tell him it was pointless, that she was dead already, that helping her would only bring him trouble. But the words wouldn't come. The human went to work. He rigged up a makeshift oxygen system, using spare parts from his mining equipment. He found chemical heat packs and pressed them against her body. He even jury-rigged them for using mining supplies, pushing fluids into her system to fight the toxins. It was crude, primitive, nothing like Arconian medical technology. But it was working. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, warmth began to return to her body. The burning in her lungs eased. Her hearts, both of them, started beating stronger. She could feel her body fighting back against the shutdown. The human sat back against the wall, breathing hard from the effort. He watched her with those dark eyes, waiting. "Name's Tyler," he said finally. "Tyler Hayes. And you just used up about 3 months of my medical supplies, so you better pull through." Velsera's lips moved. Sound came out, barely a whisper. "Why?" Tyler looked at her for a long moment. Then he shrugged. "Because leaving someone to die in the mud ain't right," he said. "Simply, don't matter who they are." And with those words, Princess Velsera realized something that would change everything. This human, the supposedly inferior being, had just shown her more honor than her entire royal court combined. Velsera woke up on the 3rd day, feeling like she'd been dragged through a star engine. Every muscle ached. Her head pounded. But she was alive, and that alone was shocking enough. She opened her eyes to find herself on a narrow cot in what could only be described as the most pathetic living quarters she'd ever seen. The walls were bare metal, scratched and dented. Equipment was scattered everywhere. The air smelled like machine oil and something she couldn't identify. And there, sitting at a makeshift table welding 2 pieces of metal together, was a human. Tyler. That was his name. He noticed her stirring and looked up. "Well, look who decided to rejoin the living. How you feeling?" Velsera tried to sit up. Pain shot through her torso, and she gasped. Tyler was beside her in an instant, helping her lean back against the wall. "Easy there. You had about 6 different types of poison in your system. Takes time to flush that out." She looked down at herself. Her royal garments were gone, replaced by what appeared to be a human work suit several sizes too large. Bandages covered her arms and neck. And was that medical tape holding together a wound on her shoulder? "What did you do to me?" Her voice came out harsh, accusatory. Tyler raised an eyebrow. "Save your life. You're welcome, by the way." "With tape?" She gestured at the crude bandaging. "Are you insane? Do you have any idea what proper medical treatment looks like?" "Yeah, I do. It looks like a fully stocked med bay on a core world hospital ship. Unfortunately, this is Station Krell 9, and I'm a miner, not a doctor. So you get tape, improvised 4 fluids, and my grandfather's old field medicine tricks." He walked back to his table. "Again, you're welcome." Velsera felt anger rising in her chest. This was humiliating. She was Arconian royalty, and she'd been patched up like some sort of broken mining equipment by a primitive human, using supplies meant for fixing machinery. "Your people are laborers," she said coldly. "You shouldn't have touched me at all. There are protocols, regulations. Humans don't have clearance to even be near Arconians without supervision. Tyler didn't even look up from his welding. Those regulations can take a long walk out the airlock. You were dying. I helped. That's all there is to it. You don't understand what you've done. If the Empire finds out a human touched royalty, then I guess we better hope they don't find out. He set down his tools and turned to face her. Look, princess or whatever you are, I don't care about your Empire's rules. Out here, we got one rule that matters. You don't let people die if you can help it. She wanted to argue, to explain how wrong he was, how the natural order things place Arconians above humans in every measurable way, but the words caught in her throat. Because this human, the supposedly inferior being, had done something her own people wouldn't. He'd saved her, when saving her benefited him nothing. The next few days were torture of a different kind. Tyler refused to treat her with the deference she'd known her entire life. He didn't bow, didn't use her titles, didn't even seem impressed that she was royalty. He shared his food with her, splitting his rations down the middle, even though she could see his supplies were limited. The food was awful, some kind of protein paste that tasted like metal and sadness. When she complained, he just shrugged. It's what I got. You want fancy Arconian cuisine. You should have gotten exiled somewhere nicer. He gave her his cot and slept in a chair. When she protested that she didn't need his charity, he ignored her. You're still recovering. Take the bed. And worst of all, he talked. Constantly. The human never shut up. He told her about Earth, the human homeworld that the Arconian Empire had conquered generations ago. He described oceans and forests and cities she'd never bothered to learn about. He talked about growing up in a place called Montana, wherever that was. Wide open spaces under a yellow sun. Had a daughter once, he said one evening while preparing their meal. Her name was Beth. Smartest kid you'd ever meet. She wanted to be a teacher, help other kids learn. Velsera noticed he spoke in past tense. What happened to her? Tyler was quiet for a moment. Empire happened. They needed workers for the outer colonies. Took everyone between 18 and 40 from our settlement. Beth was 19. I was off-world at the time, working a contract. By the time I got back, she was gone. They said she got sent to the mining operations on Arcturus 7. And you never found her? Look for 8 years. Nothing. Maybe she's still out there somewhere. Maybe not. He stirred the protein paste without looking up. That's why I'm here. Keep moving. Keep working. Keep hoping maybe I'll run into her one day. Velsera didn't know what to say. The Empire's labor conscriptions were standard practice. Efficient resource allocation. She'd never thought about what it meant to the humans being moved around like equipment. I'm sorry, she said quietly. Tyler glanced at her, surprised. You apologizing to me? That's new. I didn't know about the conscriptions. I mean, I knew they happened, but I never... She trailed off. Never thought about it from our side. Tyler finished. He brought over 2 bowls of the paste. Yeah, most Arconians don't. We're just a labor force to you people. Might as well be robots. He sat down across from her, and they ate in silence for a while. The paste was just as terrible as before, but Velsera found she didn't mind as much. Why do you help people? She asked suddenly. After everything the Empire did to you. To your daughter, why help me? Tyler thought about it. My dad used to say that the world beats you down enough on its own. You don't need to help it. If you see someone hurting and you can do something about it, you do it. Doesn't matter who they are. He met her eyes. Besides, you got exiled, right? Whatever you did, your own people threw you away. Seems to me you're not really Empire anymore. You're just someone who needed help. Over the following days, Velsera found herself actually listening when Tyler talked. He told her about human history, about wars in art and philosophy. He explained how humans saw the universe, not as something to conquer, but as something to understand. We're good at surviving, he said one night. It's kind of our thing. Earth tried to kill us with ice ages and volcanoes and diseases. We survived. Then we tried to kill each other with wars. Still survived. Then your empire came and conquered us. And look, we're still here. Still kicking. You sound proud of that, Velsera observed. Damn right I am. Humans are stubborn. We don't quit. Maybe we're not as strong or as smart as Arconians, but we got grit, we got heart, and sometimes that matters more. Velsera watched this human, this miner who had nothing, who'd lost his daughter to her empire, who lived in a metal box on a frozen waste of a planet, and he was still talking about hope, still believing people were worth saving. Her people, the superior Arconians, had sentenced her to death for speaking truth. This supposedly primitive human had risked everything to keep her alive. For the first time in her life, Velsera began to question which race was truly superior. "Thank you," she said quietly. Tyler looked up from the equipment he was fixing. "For what?" "For not letting me die, for sharing your food, for treating me like a person instead of just royalty." She paused. "No one's done that before." Tyler smiled, and it was genuine. "Well, out here on the edge of nowhere, we're all just people trying to get by. Might as well be decent to each other." And in that moment, Velsera realized something her entire civilization had missed. Humanity's strength wasn't in their bodies or their technology. It was in their refusal to give up on each other, even when giving up would be easier, especially when giving up would be easier. The alarm system in Tyler's shelter started screaming at 4 a.m. Velsera jerked awake as red emergency lights flooded the small room. Tyler was already at his computer terminal, pulling up external camera feeds. "What's happening?" she asked, swinging her legs off the cot. Her body still ached, but she was strong enough to move now. Tyler's face went pale as he stared at the screen. "We got company. A ship just landed about 2 kilometers north. Arconian design." Velsera's blood went cold. She stumbled over to look at the screen. The vessel was sleek black, designed for speed and stealth. She recognized it immediately. "Hunters," she whispered. "Hunters? What are those?" "Assassins. The royal court's personal killers." She grabbed his arm. "Tyler, you need to run. Right now. Get as far from here as you can." He looked at her like she'd grown a second head. "And leave you here? Not happening. You don't understand. These aren't regular soldiers. Hunters are enhanced beyond normal Arconians. They can read minds from 100 meters away. They move faster than your eyes can track. They're trained from birth to kill, and they never fail." She was talking fast now, panic creeping into her voice. "They're here for me. If you're with me, they'll kill you too without a second thought." Tyler was quiet for a moment, processing this. Then he walked over to a storage locker and started pulling out equipment. A mining laser, demolition charges, his old exosuit that looked like it had seen better days. "What are you doing?" Velsera demanded, getting ready. He checked the power cell on the mining laser. "Half charge. Not great. Ready? Ready for what?" "You can't fight hunters. No one fights hunters and lives." Tyler pulled on the exosuit, sealing each section with practice movements. "Yeah, well, there's a first time for everything." He grabbed a tool belt and started loading it with equipment. "How many did they send?" "What?" "How many hunters? I need to know what I'm dealing with." Velsera wanted to scream at him, to shake him until he understood how insane this was. "The standard kill team is 5. Tyler, please listen to me. You're brave, I'll give you that. But bravery doesn't matter against hunters. They'll tear you apart." He looked at her then, and his expression was completely calm. "Maybe, probably actually, but I'm not leaving you to die. So either help me figure out how to fight these things, or get out of the way." "Why? Why would you do this? I'm nothing to you. I'm Arconian royalty. My people conquered your world. I don't deserve your protection." "Maybe not," Tyler said, loading demolition charges into his belt. "But you're a person who needs help, and I already told you. That's enough." Before Velsera could argue further, Tyler's proximity sensors chimed. Movement detected. The hunters were approaching. Tyler moved fast. He grabbed her by the shoulders. "Listen carefully. How does their mind reading work? What's the range? What are the limitations?" Velsera forced herself to think tactically. "They're telepathic. They can sense thoughts, emotions, intentions within 100-meter radius. That's how they predict your movements before you make them." "Okay, what interferes with it?" "Interferes? Nothing interferes with She stopped. Wait. Strong electromagnetic fields can distort telepathic signals. It's why we don't use our abilities near power cores. Tyler grinned. This planet has magnetic storms that roll through every few hours. Big ones. That's why the mining equipment keeps breaking down. If I can time this right. He pulled up a weather monitor. Next storm hits in 20 minutes. 20 minutes? They'll be here in 5. Then I better work fast. He grabbed a datapad and started sketching out the mining station's layout. These tunnels here, they're unstable, right? You said you felt tremors last week. Yes, but... Good. I can collapse them, create choke points, force them to come at me 1 or 2 at a time instead of all 5. His hands were moving across the pad, marking locations. I've got demolition charges for the support pillars. If I place them right, I can drop half these tunnels. Velsera stared at him. You're insane. Probably. He looked up at her. Can they be killed? Like, are they immortal or something? No. They're enhanced, but they can still die. It just takes a lot to bring them down. Then they can die. That's all I need to know. Tyler sealed his helmet and grabbed his equipment. Stay here. Lock the door behind me. If I don't come back in an hour, use the emergency beacon and call for help. Tyler, wait. But he was already gone, running out into the frozen wasteland. Velsera watched through camera feeds as Tyler moved through the mining complex like he'd lost his mind. He was placing charges on support beams, rigging tripwires, setting up the mining laser at a narrow corridor intersection. His movements were quick and efficient, but she could see how outmatched he was. The hunters appeared on the north cameras, 5 of them, moving in perfect formation. They wore black armor that seemed to absorb light. Their weapons were charged and ready. Even through the camera, Velsera could feel the menace radiating from them. The lead hunter stopped, its head tilted slightly. It was scanning, using telepathy to search for mines in the area. Then the magnetic storm hit. The sky turned violent purple as electromagnetic chaos rolled across the landscape. Every piece of electronic equipment in the station flickered and sparked. The camera feeds went fuzzy with static. And in that moment, Tyler struck. The first explosion took out the main tunnel entrance. Tons of rock and ice collapsed, cutting off the hunters' direct path. They scattered, moving to alternate routes, exactly as Tyler had predicted. Velsera watched in disbelief as this human, this single miner with improvised weapons, actually managed to split up the hunter team. 2 went left, 2 went right, 1 stayed to clear the collapsed tunnel. Tyler was in the left corridor. He'd set up behind a mining vehicle, using it as cover. When the first 2 hunters rounded the corner, he triggered the demolition charges. The entire tunnel section came down. 1 hunter dodged backward in time. The other wasn't so lucky, buried under several tons of debris. 4 left, but now they knew where he was. And they were angry. The 3 mobile hunters converged on Tyler's position. Even with the magnetic storm scrambling their telepathy, they were faster and stronger than any human. They moved like liquid death, weapons firing. Tyler abandoned his cover and ran deeper into the mining complex. Plasma bolts burned past his head, melting holes in the walls. He was using the terrain, ducking through maintenance hatches too small for the hunters' larger frames, forcing them to go around. He led them into a processing chamber. The moment they entered, he triggered another set of charges. Not to collapse the tunnel this time, but to rupture a coolant line. Superheated industrial coolant sprayed across the chamber. 1 hunter took it full in the chest and went down screaming. Its armor held, but the force knocked it back into a wall. 3 left. Tyler kept moving, kept fighting. He used every dirty trick he knew. Dropped elevator platforms. Vented toxic gas in the corridors. Even used a mining laser, which actually managed to wound 1 hunter's arm. Velsera watched all of this in complete shock. This wasn't supposed to be possible. Hunters were the Empire's ultimate weapons. They didn't get outmaneuvered by humans with mining equipment. But Tyler wasn't fighting like a soldier. He was fighting like someone who'd spent 20 years working in deadly environments where 1 mistake meant death. He knew every inch of the station, every weak point, every hazard, and he was absolutely relentless. The hunters were getting frustrated. Velsera could see it in their movements. They'd expected an easy kill. Instead, they were being led through a maze of traps by a human who refused to die. Another explosion. Another hunter caught by falling debris. It survived, but its leg was crushed. Two left mobile, and the magnetic storm was still raging. Tyler led the final two into the deepest part of the mine, a massive excavation chamber where the air was thin and toxic. His exosuit was keeping him alive, but barely. The hunters didn't care about atmosphere. They could breathe anything. They had him cornered. No more tricks. No more traps. Just him and them in an open space. The hunters raised their weapons. Tyler smiled inside his helmet. Then he shot out the chamber's emergency seal. The excavation chamber was still connected to the planet's surface through a vertical shaft. When the seal broke, the violent atmospheric pressure differential created a vacuum effect. Everything not bolted down got sucked upward toward the surface, including the two hunters. Tyler had mag-locked his boots to the floor. He hung on as the hunters tumbled past him, carried by the rushing air. They tried to grab onto something, anything, but the force was too strong. They disappeared up the shaft, ejected onto the surface where the magnetic storm and toxic atmosphere were at their worst. When the pressure equalized, Tyler releases maglocks and collapsed against the wall, breathing hard. Velsera was already running through the tunnels to reach him. When she found him, he was pulling off his helmet, his face covered in sweat. 5 hunters, he gasped. I think I got all 5. Did I get all 5? She helped him to his feet. You got all 5? Good. He grinned despite his exhaustion. See? Told you I'd make them work for it. And Velsera realized she was looking at something her people had completely underestimated. Human determination mixed with human creativity. It was terrifying and beautiful at the same time. Tyler was wrong about getting all 5 hunters. One had survived. The leader, the most dangerous one. It came for them 3 hours later, after the magnetic storm had passed. Velsera and Tyler were making their way back through the damaged tunnels when she felt it. That familiar pressure in her mind. The telepathic signature of a hunter, cold and focused like a blade. Tyler, run, she screamed. The hunter dropped from an overhead vent, landing between them and the exit. It was massive, even for an Arconian. Its black armor was scorched and dented from Tyler's traps, but it was still functional, still deadly. Tyler raised his mining laser and pulled the trigger. Nothing. The power cell was finally dead. He threw it aside and pulled out a maintenance wrench, the only weapon he had left. The hunter tilted its head, studying him. When it spoke, its voice was like grinding metal. Human, you have caused considerable damage to this unit. Impressive for your species. It took a step forward. But this ends now. Tyler backed up, keeping himself between the hunter and Velsera. She could see blood seeping through his exosuit. He'd been hurt during the fighting, probably more than he'd let on. Come on then, Tyler said, hefting the wrench. His voice was steady, but she could see the tremor in his hands. He was exhausted, hurt, and he knew he couldn't win this fight. But he was going to try anyway. The hunter moved like lightning. One moment it was 3 meters away. The next it was right in front of Tyler, its blade slicing through the air. Tyler barely dodged, the weapon cutting a deep gash across his shoulder. He swung the wrench in desperation, but the hunter caught his arm and twisted. Something cracked. Tyler screamed. The hunter threw him against the tunnel wall. Tyler hit hard and slumped to ground, struggling to breathe. The wrench clattered uselessly beside him. Your resistance was admirable, the hunter said, standing over him, but futile, as all human resistance is futile. It raised its blade. Die knowing you prolonged the inevitable by mere hours. Velsera watched Tyler trying to stand, blood running down his face, his right arm hanging at an odd angle. He was still trying to fight, still trying to protect her, this human who owed her nothing, who should let her die in the mud that first day. And something inside her snapped. She'd been taught her entire life that humans were beneath her, that they were useful only for labor and obedience, that their minds were primitive and their lives expendable. But this human had shown her more honor, more courage, more genuine goodness than anyone in her entire royal court. and she would be damned if she let him die for her. Velsera stepped forward. "Stop." The hunter paused, turning its attention to her. "Princess Velsera, you will come willingly, or we will take your body. The Emperor does not care which." "I'm not going anywhere with you." She moved closer to Tyler, her mind racing. The hunter was too strong, too fast. In a straight fight, they were both dead. But there was one option. One terrible, forbidden option. Mind linking. In Arconian culture, linking minds with another being was sacred. It was done only between mates, or in the most extreme circumstances between family members. To link with someone outside your species was considered corruption of the highest order, a crime punishable by immediate execution. But it would give them a chance. "Tyler," she said quietly, kneeling beside him. "Trust me. Please." He looked up at her, confused and in pain. "What are you?" She pressed her hand to his temple and opened her mind. The connection hit like a shockwave. Velsera gasped as Tyler's consciousness flooded into hers. And oh, by the stars, human minds were nothing like she'd been taught. Arconian thoughts were ordered, logical, flowing in neat patterns like water through channels. They thought in sequences, one idea leading cleanly to the next. Human minds were chaos. Tyler's thoughts came at her from every direction at once. He was thinking about the fight, and remembering his daughter, and feeling pain, and planning his next move, and afraid and determined and hopeful all at the exact same time. Contradictions piled on contradictions. He was terrified he would die and absolutely certain he would survive. He accepted defeat while refusing to surrender. It was madness, beautiful, impossible madness. And underneath it all was something Velsera had never felt from an Arconian mind. Even now, wounded and facing death, Tyler's thoughts burned with hope, not logical hope, not calculated odds of survival, just raw, stubborn, human refusal to accept that this was the end. "What are you doing?" the hunter demanded, sensing the telepathic connection forming. Velsera didn't answer. She went deeper into the link, fully merging their minds. She felt Tyler's shock as her thoughts poured into him, felt him experience her memories, her pain, her growing realization that everything she believed about humans was a lie. And then they moved. Velsera had the tactical knowledge. 300 years of Arconian military training. She knew how hunters fought, how they thought, where their weaknesses were. Tyler had the body, the hands that had worked in deadly environments for 20 years. The instincts of someone who survived by reading situations faster than his conscious mind could process. Together, they were something neither could be alone. The hunter struck. But this time Tyler's body moved with Arconian precision, guided by Velsera's knowledge. He rolled left, exactly the right distance, exactly the right timing. The blade missed by centimeters. Tyler's good hand shot out, guided by Velsera's tactical mind. He grabbed the hunter's wrist at the pressure point she showed him. The hunter's grip weakened just enough. They moved as one being. Tyler twisted, using leverage instead of strength. The hunter stumbled. Not much, but enough. Velsera fed him information faster than thought. Where to step, how to turn. The hunter was already swinging back, adapting, but they were adapting too. Tyler grabbed a piece of broken support beam. Velsera showed him exactly where to strike. The weak point in the armor, right below the helmet seal. A spot only Arconians knew about. He swung with everything he had left. The beam connected. The hunter's helmet cracked. It staggered backward, stunned. They didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Using the link. Velsera pulled every bit of adrenaline she could from Tyler's system. His body screamed in protest, but he kept moving. He hit the hunter again. And again. The hunter fell to one knee. It looked up at them. And for the first time, Velsera saw something in its eyes she'd never seen in a hunter before. Fear. Corrupted, the hunter hissed. You've bonded with a human. You're corrupted beyond saving. It triggered something on its armor, a communication device, sending a signal back to the Empire. Then it collapsed. The moment the hunter fell, the mind link broke. Tyler and Velsera separated, and they both cried out from the shock of sudden isolation. It felt like losing a limb. Tyler slumped against the wall, his body finally giving out. His right arm was definitely broken. His shoulder was bleeding badly. His exosuit was barely holding together. But he was smiling. Did we just kill a hunter? We did, Velsera said, amazed. Together? Together? Tyler's eyes started to close. That was the craziest thing I've ever felt. Your mind is so organized, and you probably think mine is a complete mess. It is a complete mess, she admitted, but it's magnificent. Tyler, stay awake. You need to stay awake. Just need a minute. His words were slurring. He was going into shock. Velsera caught him as he started to slide down the wall. She carefully laid him flat, doing her best to stop the bleeding from his shoulder. Her medical knowledge was limited, but she tried to remember everything he'd done for her when she was dying. The night stretched on forever. Tyler drifted in and out of consciousness. Every time his breathing would slow too much, Velsera would shake him gently. Don't quit on me, she whispered, using his own words. Come on, Tyler. Don't you dare quit on me now. She stayed awake all night, monitoring his vital signs with the basic scanner. The temperature in the tunnel dropped as the heating system struggled with all the damage. She wrapped him in every thermal blanket she could find and held his good hand. At some point before dawn, Tyler's eyes opened. They were clearer now, more focused. You saved my life, he said quietly. You saved mine first. I'm just returning the favor. He tried to laugh but winced from the pain. Fair enough. Though I gotta say, the mind-linking thing, that was intense. I felt everything you felt, everything you know, your whole life. I felt yours too. She squeezed his hand. I'm sorry about your daughter, about everything my people did to yours. Not your fault. Maybe not directly, but I was part of the system that made it happen. I never questioned it. She looked down. The mind link showed me how you see the universe. It's so different from how we see it. You humans, you feel everything so deeply. Even pain, even fear. You don't try to suppress it or control it. You just feel it and keep going anyway. Tyler managed a weak smile. Yeah, that sounds about right. We're stubborn like that. It's more than stubbornness. She searched for the right word. Courage. Real courage. The kind my people have forgotten how to have. They sat in silence for a while, just breathing, just surviving. Outside, the first light of dawn was starting to break through the purple clouds. Tyler squeezed her hand back. So what happens now? That hunter sent a signal before it died. More will come. I know. You should run. Get off this planet while you can. Velsera looked at him, this broken, bleeding human who had fought 5 hunters and lived, who had shared his mind with her and shown her what real strength looked like. No, she said firmly. We run. Together. Or we stand. Together. But I'm not leaving you behind. Tyler smiled despite his pain. You know what? I think you might actually be more human than Arconian at this point. And somehow, that felt like the greatest compliment she'd ever received. The ship appeared in orbit 2 weeks after the fight with the hunters. It wasn't Arconian. The design was human, boxy, and practical, built for hauling cargo across the outer colonies. Tyler picked up the signal on his long-range scanner while he was still recovering from his injuries. We got incoming, he called out, wincing as he moved his bandaged arm. Human vessel. Colonial registry. Velsera felt her stomach tighten. She'd been dreading this moment. The past 2 weeks had been strange and peaceful. Tyler was healing. She was helping him repair the damage to the station. They'd fallen into an easy routine, and she'd almost let herself forget that the rest of the universe existed. But it did, and now it was coming for them. The ship requested permission to land. Tyler granted it, and an hour later, they were standing at the landing pad as the vessel touched down. The side hatch opened, and a woman in a colonial officer's uniform stepped out. She was maybe 30 years old, with dark hair pulled back in a practical bun. She had Tyler's eyes, the same determination in her expression. "Dad!" she shouted, running across the frozen ground. Tyler's face lit up in a way Velsera had never seen before. "Beth!" They collided in a hug, and Tyler actually cried out from the pain in his injured shoulder. The woman pulled back quickly. Sorry. I heard you were hurt. The Colonial Office picked up distress signals from the sector, reports of Arconian military activity. When I saw they came from Station Krell 9, I knew it had to be you. She was talking fast, checking him over with worried eyes. What happened? Who did this to you? It's a long story, sweetheart. Tyler looked at her like he couldn't believe she was real. 8 years. I looked for you for 8 years. They told me you were sent to Arcturus 7. Spent 3 years in the mines there before I managed to buy my way into a colonial transport crew. Worked my way up to captain. Beth smiled. I've been looking for you too, Dad. Every port I stopped at, I checked the worker registries. Velsera watched this reunion and felt something twist in her chest. This was Tyler's daughter, the one he'd told her about, the one he'd been searching for, the one the Empire had taken from him. Beth finally noticed her standing there. Her expression changed immediately, going from joy to cold wariness. Her hand moved to the weapon at her hip. That's an Arconian, she said flatly. She's with me. Tyler said quickly, Beth, this is Velsera. It's complicated. She's Arconian royalty, Beth said, her voice hard. I recognize the facial markings. High Court, probably someone important. Her hand stayed on her weapon. Dad, what is she doing here? Velsera stepped forward. Your father saved my life. The royal court exiled me here to die. He found me and helped me survive. Beth looked between them, processing this. And the hunters? The military activity. They came for her, Tyler explained. 5 of them. We fought them off. Beth's eyes widened. Dad, you fought hunters? Are you insane? You could have been killed. Yeah, well, wasn't gonna let them take her. Tyler put his good arm around Velsera's shoulders. She's good people, Beth. I know that's hard to believe, but it's true. Beth stared at them for a long moment. Then she sighed and released her weapon. Okay, I trust you, Dad. If you say she's good, I believe you. She turned to Velsera. I'm Captain Beth Hayes, Colonial Transport Service. And I'm guessing you need to get off this planet before more hunters show up. That's why we're here. Another voice called from the ship. A man appeared at the hatch, older, with gray hair and commander's insignia. Colonial Command received intelligence that the Arconian Empire is planning a full military sweep of the sector. Anyone harboring Princess Velsera will be executed. That includes entire planetary populations. Velsera felt cold dread wash over her. They're going to kill innocent people because of me? That's how the Empire works, the commander said. Collective punishment. Makes people think twice about helping fugitives. He looked at her directly. We're offering you asylum. The colonial worlds have been looking for an excuse to push back against Arconian expansion. A royal princess willing to testify about Empire war crimes? That's valuable. You mean I'm useful to you? Velsera said quietly. Yes, but that doesn't mean we're wrong. The commander descended the ramp. I'm Commander Frank Morrison. I've been fighting the Empire for 20 years. Lost my home world to their expansion. So yeah, I want to use you. But I also genuinely want to help you. Those things aren't mutually exclusive. Velsera looked at Tyler. He was watching her carefully, letting her make her own decision. You should go with them, he said softly. They can protect you, get you somewhere safe. What about you? I'll stay here. This station isn't much, but it's mine. And now I got Beth back. That's more than I ever hoped for. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. You'll be better off with the Colonial Fleet. Velsera spent the next day preparing to leave. Beth's crew helped them repair what they could of the station. Commander Morrison shared intelligence about Empire movements. Everything was falling into place, but Velsera felt empty. She was packing the few belongings she had when Tyler found her in the storage room. Hey, he said awkwardly. Just wanted to say goodbye before you go. The ship leaves in an hour. I know. They stood in uncomfortable silence. After everything they'd been through, after sharing minds and fighting together and surviving together, neither of them knew what to say. Finally, Tyler spoke. I'm going to miss you. That probably sounds stupid, but it's true. It's not stupid. Velsera looked down. Tyler, I don't know if I can do this. Leave? Go with the colonial forces. Let them use me as some kind of political symbol. You don't have a choice. If you stay, the Empire will kill you, and they'll kill anyone around you. I know. That's what makes this so hard. She turned to face him. You showed me what humans really are, not the propaganda my people spread, not the slaves and servants we thought you were. You showed me humans are brave and kind and impossibly stubborn. You fight for each other even when it costs you everything. So, do you now? Tyler said. You fought for me, saved my life. That's pretty human. That's what I'm afraid of. Velsera smiled sadly. I spent my whole life believing I was superior, that Arconians were the pinnacle of evolution. And then I met you, and everything I believed turned out to be a lie. Now I don't know who I am. Tyler moved closer. You're someone who stood up for what's right even when it cost you everything. That's who you are, and that's exactly who the galaxy needs right now. But the Royal Court exiled you because you told the truth about their genocide. Tyler interrupted. They wanted to silence you, make you disappear. And if you run away and hide now, they win. They get to keep committing their crimes in the dark. Velsera stared at him. What are you saying? I'm saying don't run. Stay and fight. Use whatever platform the colonial forces give you. Tell the whole galaxy what the Empire is really doing. Make noise. Cause trouble. He grinned. Be human about it. The Empire will hunt me forever. Yep, but you won't be alone. Tyler gestured toward the ship. You'll have the colonial fleet. You'll have people who believe in what you're fighting for. And for what it's worth, you'll have me. You said you were staying here. Yeah, I did say that, didn't I? Tyler scratched his head. But then I thought about it. I've been running and hiding for 8 years. Moving from station to station. Keeping my head down, just trying to survive. And where did that get me? Nowhere. He looked toward where Beth was working on the ship. My daughter didn't hide. She fought her way up from the mines to become a ship captain. She made something of herself. Maybe it's time I did the same. Velsera felt hope flicker in her chest. You'd come with me? Fight against the Empire. Someone's got to keep you out of trouble. Tyler smiled. Besides, you saved my life. I figure I owe you at least a few more years of watching your back. This is insane. We're talking about going to war with the most powerful empire in the galaxy. Yeah, well, humans are pretty good at insane. Tyler offered his hand. So what do you say, princess? Ready to cause some trouble? Velsera looked at his hand. This human who had every reason to hate her people, who had lost his daughter to empire conscription, who had been beaten down by the galaxy, and still somehow managed to stand back up with a smile. She took his hand. Let's cause some trouble. An hour later, they stood together at the ship's boarding ramp. Commander Morrison was explaining the plan. The colonial worlds would provide protection in exchange for Velsera's testimony about Empire war crimes. They broadcast her story across every system, let the galaxy know what the Arconians were really doing to conquered species. It was dangerous, possibly suicidal. The Empire had ships, armies, resources beyond counting. But as Velsera looked around at the crew preparing for departure, she saw something the Empire didn't have. She saw Beth, who'd survived 3 years in the mines and never gave up. She saw Commander Morrison, who'd lost his home but kept fighting. She saw Tyler, injured and exhausted and ready to go another round. She saw humans, fragile, short-lived, supposedly inferior humans who refused to stay down no matter how many times the universe knocked them over. And she realized something that would have horrified her royal court. She realized she'd rather stand with these humans than sit with all the Arconian lords in the galaxy. The ship lifted off, carrying them away from Station Krell 9. Velsera stood at the viewport, watching the frozen planet fall away below them. Nervous? Tyler asked, standing beside her. Terrified, she admitted. Good. That means you're smart enough to know what we're getting into. He smiled. But we're going to do it anyway, because someone has to. And apparently, that someone is us. The royal court wanted to silence me, Velsera said quietly. They exiled me to die alone and forgotten. Yeah, they did, Tyler agreed, but they made one mistake. What's that? They let a human find you. Tyler grinned. And humans have this really annoying habit of not leaving well enough alone, especially when someone needs help. So now instead of dying quiet, you're going to live loud. You're going to tell everyone what the Empire is really doing. And me and Beth and Commander Morrison and every other human who's sick of being pushed around, we're going to help you do it. Vel Sarah smiled, feeling something she hadn't felt since before her exile. Hope. Real, genuine hope. You know what the worst part is, she said. My people always called humans primitive. Simple, easily controlled. But you're not simple at all. You're complicated and contradictory, and absolutely impossible to predict. You feel everything, and somehow that makes you stronger, not weaker. You're terrifying. Good, Tyler said. Let's make sure the Empire figures that out too. The ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying them toward an uncertain future. But for the first time in a long time, Vel Sarah wasn't afraid of what came next, because she wasn't alone anymore. And she'd learned something important from these impossible humans. Sometimes standing up is more important than survival. Sometimes making noise is more important than staying safe. And sometimes the weakest-looking people in the galaxy turn out to be the strongest ones of all. The royal court had exiled her to kill the truth, but they forgot that humans don't know when to quit. And now neither did she.